if anyone has actually done work with multiple vendors and has had to manage those vendors, like, firsthand, I mean, having more than a few vendors, it just basically takes up all your time managing them. And so fully agree that having a few vendors that can do multiple things, that is really helpful, especially like in the assessment space. But the difficulty there is like finding a vendor that is able to do that, but is still like nimble enough and agile enough to be able to fulfill some of the idiosyncrasies and requirements in these large companies.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I think both you and, I know his episode's not out yet, but we've already recorded with Richard Rosenau, and we talked a little bit about this last week too. It seems like Patrick sort of advocates for the build strategy of having to do all this in-house. But to me, that seems fundamentally unscalable. And this is basically what Richard said last week. I think it's got to be the buy strategy. If you're really going to just scale and deploy analytics at scale, you've got to have, people that can be that force multiplier, because you don't need a 50 person or 100 person or 150 person people analytics team when you could have, I don't know how big your team is at Coca-Cola, but, a 15 or 20 person team and a few really good technologies that can make you guys go to the moon,
Yeah, we are not that big, and I think it's because we are probably more so on the buy side as well, for not just people analytics, but other parts of the business as well, because we don't know what the future holds for technology and analytics. And so it's easier for us to go with vendors that specialize in a certain space, and they are doing all the research and the heavy lifting in terms of coming up with new things there. And then we're able to leverage that much more quickly. I know that some companies, they build quite a bit of what they're doing. I mean, I would love to do that, but in terms of like cost and time and resources, it's probably not feasible for a lot of companies.
Well, I think it's fine when you're crossing that first wall. Like build is totally fine, but as more and more companies are trying to cross that second wall of people analytics, I just don't think it makes sense anymore. It's like the example I use is, imagine you had to build Microsoft Excel on your team before you could do your first analysis. It's like, no, go buy Microsoft Excel. Geez, why would you do that? And so I think that is the role that when you're crossing that second wall that a lot of companies are going to be thinking about.
Yeah, and we have had conversations like with our head of data science. Her name's Sylvia Ochoa. And so we've talked about, maybe we can have a dedicated resource in the data science team that focuses primarily on HR. So in our team, we mostly have IO psychologists on the team. So they have an IO psychology background, but they have statistics as like one of the tools, like in their tool belt, but they're not doing like hardcore machine learning type of work. And so it just doesn't make sense for our team to be staffing up like that. And so we've talked a little bit about doing a little bit of building internally, but I think eventually it would be, those folks would probably be helping us like vet technologies that we buy, and just to make sure that the technology is doing what it actually does and isn't doing something completely crazy or illegal.
Absolutely. The legality part is a key, crucial component nowadays too, especially with all the legislation and regulations that are going on.